I can tell you that I've never met a child as evil as David.
What went wrong in this guy's head? Why is my brother sitting in jail right now for effectively the rest of his life?
Something's wrong here. I know the guns are wrong, okay? I know that it looks bad.
When I look back at David's life now, David strikes me as just somebody who it was just born into this world angry.
I didn't want this to happen. I didn't plan on this to happen.
When I first told people that there's something seriously wrong with him and he needs help, he's going to end up killing somebody someday, some people thought I was crazy. I feel that I can shed some light on what David's about. That is Dell in his uniform, taken at the Lyons Police Department. From the looks of it, I would say it's probably in the 90s. The first time I met him was the first week of March in 1978. And I was starting to work at the court clerk's office. He was extremely charming, okay? Very personable, had a great smile. And I just found him very attractive. And then as I got to know him, he was a very big romantic. Since we worked in the same building, he would show up with gifts and flowers frequently. After we'd been going out for probably a month, he asked me if I wanted to meet his children. At that time in my life, I was 30 years old. I had recently been divorced, and I had 2 small children. He had been divorced for a couple of years. His wife had left him and the 3 kids with him.
Everyone, come say hello.
We went in and he introduced me to all of them.
This is Deborah.
Hello. There's a little girl with her hair all, like crazy, like she hadn't combed it in 6 weeks, and smile on her face.
It's very nice to meet you.
Oh. I definitely felt, oh, poor thing, she needs a mother.
And this is my eldest, Tom.
The first time I met Debbie, there was just something different about her. She took a deep interest in myself and my brother and sister. She was funny. And Debbie did not appear to be one of these other women that my dad had dated. Debbie was, and is very intelligent woman.
And you must be David. It's really nice to meet you.
David was the next one. He's the middle child.
David. Deborah's talking to you.
Hello. The first time I met them, I thought they were very cute, and they were very friendly. And they made a good impression on me. But David Schaefer, he is unlike anybody I've ever met. I've called him a sociopath for many years. Something is wrong with him. We dated probably a year before I moved in. I noticed that David wasn't like the rest of the kids. And the thing that really stuck out to me with David was you couldn't believe anything he said.
When Debbie moved in, now you have to follow rules. You come home from school, you do your chores, you do your homework, you study for an hour. And David did not take to that very well. There were problems.
David, what are you doing?
Watching TV.
If you ask him, did you do your homework? he would say, I did it already. Oh, really? Yeah, okay, bring it to me. Well, I'll do that after dinner. I said, no, you can do it right now.
Go get it. I want to see it.
And he brought it down, and obviously no homework. And he lied to me. He never even touched it.
What is this?
He would stare at me like he didn't even see me there. He was just looking straight through me. And it made me feel uncomfortable.
You told me this was finished.
It was almost an eerie feeling. Sometimes goosebumps. Like I have right now, just talking about it. To me, it looked like he was, in his mind, was saying, I don't care what you say. I don't care what you think. I'm going to do what I want.
Well, you're just going to have to finish it now.
Nah. And I said, well, you go to your room and finish it. So he walked outside and went out to play.
David, you know the rules.
I said no.
He would do anything but what he was told to do. Period. I had to take into consideration that their mother had left them, and I thought David might be projecting his anger towards his mother who had left onto me. But these other two kids went through the same thing he did, and they're not doing it. It was obviously a sign that something was wrong.
David was going to do what he wanted to do. He wasn't going to let some new woman just stroll in there and start giving orders. He wasn't going to have it.
He was a loner and a troublemaker. It seemed like the only time he was happy is when he was tormenting somebody or lying or manipulating. Take, for instance, we had a pet pig. When he got big enough, we were going to butcher it. One of the kids loved the pig. So we didn't tell her. We told her Mr. Pig went away one night. We sat down and we were having pork chops. When he's thinking something to do to hurt somebody, you could tell in the eyes, and it almost have a sparkle in them. She went to take a bite of this pork chop. He smiled. I thought, oh no. And then he blurted it out before I could say anything.
You want to know what you're really eating?
He just looked at her and laughed and said, you're eating Mr. Piggy. And she said, no, I'm not.
That's not true.
He said, oh, yes, you are. And of course, Dell and I couldn't deny it.
David.
She was maybe 7 years old at the time, and she was devastated that this pig got butchered. She left the table crying. And he thought that was so funny.
What is the matter with you? Why would you say something like that?
He just sat there at the table and just laughed. He absolutely enjoyed that moment. He enjoyed anything that would upset somebody. I would say most of David's happiness came from making anybody miserable that he could. And the older he got and the more this stuff happened, the more serious I thought the problem was. If the other children had misbehaved and they got punished, say take the television away, the phone away, phone privileges, or they get grounded, it worked with them, but it did not work with David. We sought the counseling from a pastor. He suggested that maybe a smack on the butt would bring him around. And so he made a little paddle for him and said, this is particularly for David. But David, I don't think anything worked. I don't even think spanking helped.
Of course, I'm sure. I always keep it right here.
And you really think it was David?
If I get extra money, I would hide this money inside a sock. Well, one day I was going to go shopping and I go in, there's no money there.
Everybody, get in here!
When I found out the money was missing, and I told Dell, he lined up his kids and asked where the money was.
Does anybody want to tell me what happened to the money in Debbie's drawer? No? No one?
And they all said no, they didn't know anything about it. And then finally somebody broke and it was David. Said he took it.
think you and I both know what it was.
Yeah, it was me. So what?
David got a beating that day. It didn't even faze him. He was like, oh well, it didn't matter. He didn't cry. He didn't do anything. It was like a defiant look in his face and just saying, go ahead, beat me. I'm not going to react. And the more it went on, the more intense it got and the more intimidating it got. He just looks right through you. It was shocking to me because I never saw anybody look at me that way before. Especially a child.
When David was disciplined, it just seemed like he just got more angry. David was really defiant towards Debbie. I never did understand his level of defiance towards the simplest things.
It was intimidating, but I didn't think of him as a violent person at that time. That came later. Later on, I realized he was a sociopath. I just never imagined it. Now I'm getting emotional. I don't know why. I don't know. I guess he does terrify me. Okay, this picture, right after our wedding. Everybody else is smiling nice, but he has to make a face. That was the way David was. If some stranger was looking at this picture, they'd just think that David was being a clown. I see orneriness and his defiance. Everybody told him to smile, and he didn't smile. I did not think at that point that he would be like he was, and he would be a killer, or even that he would be as devious and manipulative as he came to be. But after the wedding, I noticed a shift in David's behavior, and especially towards me. After Dell and I got married, David seemed to instigate arguments or fights between us. One day, it was winter, and Dell started screaming at me. And I'm like, what in the world are you upset about?
What the hell's wrong with you?
What are you talking about?
Why would you do that to him? He's just a child.
And then he starts to tell me this story that David told him. He told his dad that I locked him out of the house in freezing weather with no coat and wouldn't let him in. And he was out there for like 3 hours after school. Well, that's not true.
I don't know why he said that to you, but he's lying, Del.
Oh, so now my son's a liar, huh?
I had no idea what he's talking about. No idea. I said there was no way that I locked him out of the house. Dell was angry with me because he believed David. He almost always believed David. He actually got physical with me.
It's freezing out there, Deborah. How dare you?
When Dell would lose his temper with me, he would pull at my hair or grab me or shove me up against the wall and just, yell in my face.
You've had it for him since the second you got here.
That's not true, Del. Let go of me.
Then why did I find him outside shivering in the cold?
I don't know, Del, but I'm telling you, I would never do that.
And David's just sitting there grinning. He wanted me gone. Because I was the intruder. I was the threat.
He loved the chaos between my dad and Debbie. He just seemed to thrive on it. He wanted to hear the fighting. So I just asked him, I said, why are you doing all this? And his response was, I do it because I can do it.
Why would you tell Dad you did that?
Because I hate her, and I want her gone.
I want Mother back. I don't like this bitch Debbie. I'm getting her out of here. He was going to make sure one way or another that they weren't going to stay married.
I felt vulnerable every day that David was in my home. I would worry about what is he going to do next? You know, what is the next story going to be? You know, and is Dell going to believe me or is he going to believe him? But I wasn't giving up. I was not giving up. He manipulated his father into fighting with me every chance he got. One day, I'd just gotten home from work, and the next thing I hear, Dell's yelling at me.
Yeah, Dell, I'm home.
I said, what is your problem? And he said, how dare you? And I said, what are you talking about? And he says, you kicked David down the basement stairs, and you went down and kicked him in the gut and his back while he was on the ground.
David told me what you did to him.
I'm like, unbelievable. I realized David was lying to him immediately. And I told him that. And he's lying to you again.
Not this again. You don't really believe him, do you?
Then how do you explain this?
He said, well, how come he's got a bruise? And I said, I have no clue. But I did not touch him. He could have fallen, hit himself, fell down in the playground. Who knows?
Or maybe he did this to himself. Did you ever think about that?
Dell blamed it all on me. And of course, I got slapped around that day. Dell!
You never should have touched him.
David enjoyed the fact that his dad physically abused me. This was about the time that I told Dell there's something serious wrong with him and he's going to end up killing somebody someday. Dell was a very, very good detective. He was 24 years on the police department. He could see through other people and the criminals, but he could not, for anything, even see clearly his own son. One day out of the blue, David's mother called Dell and asked if David could come live with her. It was one of the happiest days of my life. And I know that sounds horrible, but it was just like the hugest relief off my shoulders. Dell told me what was going on with David. That other than that, I did not keep in touch with David. He was gone. That's all I cared about. He was gone.
We were both in our early 20s when we reconnected. I moved out to Pennsylvania in the late 80s, and the first person I called was David. For a while, when he moved with my mom, he was doing well. He was in construction. He did roofing. He built decks. I thought at the time he could absolutely get it together. But there was an occasion back in 1991 where my mother and I were in the kitchen. We got a phone call.
Hello?
It was the police looking for my stepfather.
It's the police. Get on the other phone.
They wanted to know if he owned this particular firearm. And he proceeded to tell us, yeah, David had a loaded gun.
He did what?
He got into a disagreement with somebody. And he went and took one of my stepfather's guns and threatened the guy and was arrested.
No, that's impossible. He knows better than that.
When I heard that David had done all this, my first thought was, are you out of your freaking mind? To take a loaded firearm and go after somebody, that to me is just insane. My father, being a police officer, raised us to use guns properly. It was a huge red flag for me, but I didn't look at it as, any kind of pattern of behavior developing. I just thought, here's my idiot brother doing something stupid. He spent a couple months in jail over that incident. I had hoped that David spending some time in jail would put him back on the right path. It did not turn out that way. No, his life ended up a lot worse. This is a picture of my brother, myself, and Debbie's son. It's an open house at the police department where my father worked. It was taken when David was probably 13. I never really looked at it a lot until he was sentenced. When I look at this, I see a happy kid. I don't see somebody who would eventually kill. It's kind of ironic now because here he is in a jail cell, make-believe. Dad would say, if you don't behave, this is where you'll end up. Well, David didn't behave, and that's where he ended up. This is his life for real. He's in the front of this picture smiling, but I don't think he's got that expression any longer. After the gun incident, he had nowhere else to go, so he ends up at my place. He didn't go to work. He didn't look for a job. He mooched money off my dad.
You ever think about finding a job, man?
No need to. Dad just sent me some money.
And David expressed this view to me of wanting my father's belongings.
Once he's gone, I'll get what I'm owed.
On numerous occasions over the years, he would say to me, when Dad dies, I want this firearm and this. I feel Dad owes me a fishing boat. Dad owes me hunting gear because he allowed Debbie to come in and he allowed her to make all these changes in our lives.
You won't be around forever.
And I would kind of be like, what do you mean when he dies? Well, you know, everybody's got to go sometime. And it just would make me wonder, like, why would you even talk about that? You know, who sits there and says, and thinks about when their parents are going to be dead and what they're going to gain from it? He doesn't get the concept of family. He schemed. He plotted. He looked around and saw what my dad had and thought, this should all be mine. How do I get it?
As David got older, he hated me more. Dell and I got divorced. I stayed at the house, and after the divorce, I hoped I never had to deal with David again. But he started calling me in the middle of the night, threatening me. A couple years after Dell and I divorced, I was woken in the middle of the night by a phone call.
Hello?
The voice I heard on the other end was David's, and he said to me that he was going to slit my horse's throats and then come for me next.
David? Is that you?
When I first heard it, I thought, did I hear that right? There was no real emotion to his voice. It was just the same monotone voice that he always used. And the words were frightening. So I hung up. Now, mind you, I'm out in the country, 20 minutes out of town, living by myself, and there's not a house close to me. Terrified, I got up, I got my gun, and the phone rang again. This time he didn't threaten me, he just made funny noises.
Don't call you again, David. This isn't funny.
I didn't know where he was calling from. He could have been calling me from down the street. The heart starts pounding. You know, you're nervous. Actually, I got up and started pacing and looking out windows, you know, making sure all the doors are locked. Must have called 15 times that night. I called the sheriff's department and they said, well, we can't do anything. I did not sleep for a few nights. I was there all alone and it was very scary. I didn't know what he was capable of at that point.
David was arrested for burglary charges. He was breaking into homes in the middle of the night and stealing whatever he could get his hands on. He was sentenced to state prison for 6.5 to 33 years. It's sad, but I also looked at it like maybe this is exactly what he needs to get his stuff together.
I was told by Tom that he was charged and convicted on 13 burglaries and 13 receiving stolen property. I felt very relieved that he was in jail and not going to bother me. I really enjoy the fact when he's incarcerated because I know he's not going to come after me. He's not going to call me. He's not going to drive by my house or anything like that.
He was paroled after 6.5 years, and he went to live with my father. Instead of allowing him to go to a halfway house, my dad stepped in and said, no, come home to Dad. I'm going to take care of you.
When I heard that David was out on parole and he was living in Dell's house, that I was apprehensive about. That meant he was close by. I think Dell's house is maybe half an hour from mine, 40 minutes at the most. I was worried about the fact I know Dell's got guns. I know he's got tons of ammo. And, you know, there's David. I was afraid he was going to carry out his threats. After we were divorced, Dell remarried. It was on Sunday, the 14th of January of 2018. It was about, 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. I received a text from the third wife, and all the text said was, he's gone, ! And I got the worst feeling. The message said, he's gone. And I wrote back, what? She said another one. She said, Dell's dead. He was found dead in bed. He wouldn't wake up. I said, who found him? And she said, David. I was told that David called 911.
911, where's your emergency?
My name is David Schaefer.
What's going on there, sir?
Well, I woke up this morning and my father passed away.
Dell was actually taken to a funeral home. They thought it was natural causes. Everybody thought it was natural death.
I gave him CPR.
Okay, all right, sir.
He's dead.
I just wrote back, David did it. I don't care what anybody says, David killed him. And she says, how do you know that? I said, because I know David, he killed him.
He's there at the house with you?
Yes, he's on the couch.
He's definitely not breathing. You're positive of that, sir?
No, he's not breathing. He's ice cold.
This whole thing was a ruse. Poor me, come help me. Poor me, my dad's dead. Yeah, poor me, I had to find my dad.
What is your father's name?
Albert Schaefer.
Okay, I'm sorry to hear that. And
I am too.
and how old is your dad?
He was 71.
What a joke he is. I mean, it's pathetic the way he tried to sound like he was sympathetic. But you notice the one thing that caught my eye. How old is your dad? he was 71. In his mind, he's gone. Let's get him out of here. That's the way I hear it when I hear that phone call.
It was a Sunday morning. This is how I found out my dad died.
Hello?
She said, well, I just wanted to check up on you. And it made me raise an eyebrow, and I said, what's going on? She said, you didn't hear. And I said, hear what?
What are you talking about?
And she said, your dad was found dead this morning. His cause of death, as far as I knew, was he died in his sleep of a heart attack. I was devastated. I just started crying. But I really didn't have any reason to suspect that it was anything other than natural causes.
I gave him CPR.
Okay. All right, sir. He's definitely not breathing. You're positive of that, sir.
No, he's not breathing. He's ice cold.
This is my first time hearing it. That doesn't sound right at all. He doesn't sound panicked. He doesn't sound like, there doesn't sound like there's any sense of urgency or anything like that in his voice. It sounds staged. That's what it sounds like. He could be describing a bad meal, is what it sounds like, rather than being somebody who's just found their father deceased. Yeah, I don't buy it at all. When I called David, and I said, hey, it's Tom, how are you? How you holding up?
Hey. Just checking in.
And his words to me, and I quote, were, I suppose you're calling to see how much money you're getting. And I said, no, I'm calling to see what the hell happened to our father. And he said, well, I don't know what happened to him. I went and I tried to wake him up. He wouldn't wake up. But anyway, back to the money. The will is in my name. I'm the executor, and it is non-contestable. I was thrown to the floor by that. David, I don't care about the will. Why would you come right out and say that to me? Very first thing. So that there raised some suspicions. I know something's not right.
The will stated for everything that he owned to go to David. His beloved son, David. Never heard Del say that about David. He may have favored him in some marriage, but never beloved. The other kids weren't even mentioned. He would never leave everything to David because I know how he felt about the other kids. And I know he had a will before that because I had it made with me. So I can understand him getting a new will after we got divorced, but this will was just made a few months before he passed away. Alarm bells went off. I just don't imagine any way that Delbert would have signed this new will without somebody forcing him to do it. Well, the next thing I know, I have a detective on my doorstep. The detective that came to visit me said, I understand you think David did it, and we do too.
What we do know for certain is that Delbert's death was not from natural causes.
David apparently had told the funeral home to cremate the body. And then when the mortician goes to prepare the body, he says, wait a minute. This is not a natural death. This man's been beaten.
According to our ME's report, it was a very violent death.
And that's when he called the coroner. The coroner came out and said, it's a homicide. And then the police got involved.
he had bruises that I have to account for. And with you being the only witness, I have to come to you and say, well, what about this? What about this?
They said he suffered greatly. No less than 6 strikes to the face, 2 strikes to the back of his head. He had 6 broken ribs. He had a fractured sternum.
Maybe he broke his ribs falling down in the snow. I can't tell you this. I can't.
After he beat him, he put him on the couch, and then he waited till he died, which was hours, I guess.
When you saw that your dad was cold, what did you do?
I gave him CPR.
Okay.
And he was unresponsive. He was dead.
When he was finally dead, he went to the ATM and took $500 out of his dad's account and then called the EMTs.
Anybody that's talking about me and my dad will tell you me and my dad were in a good relationship.
It was like somebody hit me with a brick. I told the detective that came to visit me that please find justice for Dell.
I received a copy of my father's death certificate in the mail. After reading that, I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. And then at the very bottom, it says cause of death and homicide. And I lost it. David was the only one there. The only one. That little son of a bitch killed my dad.
I didn't kill my father. Nobody's ever said you did.
The reason we keep asking these questions is because you were the only one there to be able to tell us the story.
I confronted him over the phone. When I asked him point blank, what did you do to our father? He told me to shut the F up and never bring it up again.
I would not want my father to be dead at all.
Yes.
I don't get anything out of his death. Nothing.
I was greeted with a response of, don't you ever effing talk to me about that again. That is a forbidden subject. Don't you ever call or talk to me again. Now, an innocent man says, I didn't do anything to my dad. I don't know what happened to Dad, Tom. A guilty man says, don't you ever bring that up again. Then I knew he did it. It was clear as day. That little son of a bitch killed my dad.
I just hope you guys don't think I had something to do with his death. It would devastate me to think that I'm going to spend the rest of my life in jail.
I wanted him to feel what my father felt. Yeah, I wanted him to know what it was like. I want to find him, and I want to just choke the life out of him.
Look, I don't know what happened to my dad. I can't tell you how many times. I don't know exactly what happened. It's unfortunate.
I had my keys, and I wanted to get out of the apartment, and my girlfriend said no. Because if you do something to him, you're no better than him. Let the courts handle it. And that's all I could do.
This is David's mugshot from prison. This is after he's convicted and sentenced. When I look at this photo, I see the evil in his eyes. This picture reminds me of his stare, that he stares at me mostly. This time he's not smirking because he's on his way to prison. I don't ever want to see him look at me again, and I don't ever want to see him again.
This is a guy that I'm ashamed to say I'm related to. I see a guy who is sorry that he got caught And I think he's angry at that. I don't think he's angry about killing my dad. I think he's angry that he's going to have to spend the rest of his life in a jail cell. He still calls what happened to my dad an awful, tragic accident. This guy beat my father to death. That's the cold, awful reality. The amount of time he received for this crime doesn't sit well with me. The sentence that I thought would have been appropriate for him would have been life in prison. If David ever got out of prison, I think Debbie should have her head on a swivel. When it comes to Debbie, I don't think David has ever forgiven her for anything that he perceives was done wrong to him.
I will always be scared of Dave as long as he's alive. I don't know why he's got it out for me. The only thing I can think of is because I tried to bring structure and discipline to his life, and he's never forgiven me for that. You know, I said David would be a killer, but I never dreamed it would be his dad.
October 2000, Caribbean island of Antigua. After the breakdown of his second marriage, 40-year-old John Allen Muhammad kidnapped 3 of his young children and fled to the island of Antigua, where he met 14-year-old Lee Boyd Malvo.
Lee Boyd was very smart in school. He was a good kid. He enjoyed sports. He was a normal, average, everyday boy being raised by a single mother.
Muhammad looks at Malvo and sees a young man who hasn't got a father figure, who doesn't really have an authority figure in his life at all. So that's a role that he can step into, and he can start pulling his strings.
When Muhammad left Antigua, Malvo followed him.
And once Malvo got across and was on the mainland of the United States, he reached out to Muhammad and wanted to come be with him.
By September 2001, John Muhammad's life was crumbling around him. He had 2 failed marriages and had lost custody of his children. Lee Boyd Malvo was all he had left.
I think Malvo was desperate to find a father figure. I think he would have done anything that Muhammad suggested. He was completely under Muhammad's spell. But it wasn't that one was senior to the other. Malvo may have been younger, but he was every bit as determined to kill and to impress his father figure.
The pair went on a 9-month rampage across the United States, robbing and killing at random before executing their plan in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., killing 17 people and leaving 13 injured.
Do I believe my father's a serial killer? Yes, I believe John Muhammad committed the crimes that he was accused of.
These killer stories begin in 1960. John Allen Muhammad was born John Allen Williams on December 31st in New Orleans, Louisiana.
His mother died of breast cancer when he was very young, around 3 years old, and he was sent to Baton Rouge to live with his aunts because his father just left. His aunts had several children, and John and his 2 brothers and 2 sisters were raised by them in Baton Rouge. John Muhammad's family was expected to do all of the chores in the home, so John grew up feeling pretty inadequate from a very young age.
In 1978, Williams graduated from Scotlandville High School at the age of 17.
He joins the Louisiana National Guard. It gives him a kind of rank, status, a bit of authority, which in many ways appeals to him. He is a man who likes to fit into hierarchies, at least in his early years.
At the age of 20, John Williams fell in love with a girl called Carol, and they married in 1981. Welcoming their son Lindbergh into the world the following year.
What kind of man was my father? My father was a very stern man, a very, very confident man. He was in the military. He was the type of person, if he said something, you can bet that he was going to do whatever it takes to get that done.
After a few years, though, Carol started hearing rumors that John was seeing another woman. And at one point, she went and knocked on this woman's door who lived in the same neighborhood they did and saw John sitting on the couch and realized that her husband was cheating on her.
John's new girlfriend was Mildred. His wife Carol made the decision to separate from her husband and took their son Lindbergh with her.
In 1985, he decides, when his first marriage is collapsing, that he's going to convert to Islam. And I think this means a great deal to him. And a couple of years later, he joins the Nation of Islam, run by Louis Farrakhan. For him, Islam was very significant.
After facing disciplinary action, John Allen Williams left the Louisiana National Guard and in 1985, at the age of 25, enlisted in the U.S. Army. In the same year, he was divorced from Carol and moved in with Mildred, marrying in 1988. 2 years later, he was deployed to the Persian Gulf. Williams thrived in the Army, gaining the highest level of expert M16 marksmanship, and was decorated for his service.
So you have this period of calm in Williams's life, based in the US Army, and it's as if he's hanging on to the Army as his identity. That is what makes John Williams work. And for a long time, he really remains quite stable. He isn't rushing off. He's not. I think he likes the uniform. I think he likes the identity. And I think he feels that, oh, I mean something now. I amount to something.
On April 26, 1994, at the age of 33, Williams was honorably discharged from the U.S. Army. He was now living in Tacoma, Washington State, with Mildred and their 3 children.
He starts a couple of businesses, neither of which really work, and they fall apart. And his marriage to Mildred isn't going terrifically well either.
They fought a lot, and John was abusive to her on numerous occasions. And their relationship really went downhill. He loved his children. Children were a very big part of what he felt like his role in life was. And so he tried to be a good father to them, and they did have a close relationship.
My mother raised me most of my life. Me and my father spent a lot of time talking over the phone, and then we had our summers to where we would meet up with each other. So when I was younger, we went to Washington for a summer. Then my 6th grade year going to 7th grade, I went to Washington and spent the summer with him.
On one summer visit with his father, Williams called his ex-wife Carol and told her that Lindbergh wasn't returning home.
Carol ended up having to get a court order to get Lindbergh back to Louisiana, and it took that whole summer. During that period, John tried to brainwash Lindbergh.
It was just one of those summers that I went down there, and he was telling me things that at that moment that I felt that he knew I wanted to hear, to keep me away from my mother and keep me from going home.
In September 1999, John Allen Williams' second marriage to Mildred was falling apart, and the couple separated. 3 months later, Mildred filed for divorce and custody of their 3 children.
That is a very big blow to Williams and to his psyche. You've already had this slightly frail psyche, looking for identity. He took some identity from being married with 3 children. He took some identity from having been in the army. But now he really is, in a sense, cut loose. He is on his own, and he doesn't know what to do. So if there is a trigger to the events that were to follow, it is that divorce, because then Mildred applies for a restraining order, making sure that Williams to become John Mohammed, cannot have any contact with her or with their children.
After receiving the restraining order, Williams kidnapped his 3 children and fled to the Caribbean island of Antigua, where an unlikely friendship would have deadly consequences. October 2000, Antigua. John Allen Williams arrived on the island with his 3 children. They were welcomed into the local community, and Williams made a living forging illegal documents. Soon after his arrival, he met and enlisted the help of a 14-year-old islander called Lee Boyd Malvo.
Lee Boyd Malvo was born in Kingston, Jamaica in 1985. His mother was Una James. She was not married to his father. His father stuck around for a few years, but then left, so Una raised Lee Boyd by herself. They moved around a lot, sometimes Barbados, sometimes Jamaica, and eventually made their way to Antigua.
I think right when Muhammad met Malvo, there was a bond, and Muhammad used him to traffic fake birth certificates on the island, just messenger type work, and paid him a little bit.
Young Lee Boyd Malvo had big dreams of one day becoming a commercial airline pilot and was a talented artist.
But the one thing that he does have some control over is his schoolwork. And I think this provides him with that consistency, with that security and that stability. And he does incredibly well in school. He gets good exam results. He appears to be a really promising student.
Malvo's mother obtained fake documents from Williams and travelled to Fort Myers, Florida, looking for work.
Una James left Lee Boyd Malvo with John Muhammad in Antigua to watch him while she was gone.
And this was the moment in which the father-son relationship that lay at the heart of what was to come in the future began to form around the pair.
On May 24, 2001, John Allen Williams, his children, and Lee Boyd Malvo also left Antigua for Florida. Malvo travelled on forged documents. He stayed with his mother in Fort Myers. Williams took his children back to Bellingham in Washington state. While he was gone, Mildred had been granted a no-fault divorce and full custody of their 3 children. The authorities were soon alerted of Williams' return. The children were seized and returned to their mother, who fled to the East Coast and the suburbs of Washington, D.C. Williams, now alone and homeless, moved into a shelter. A month later, Lee Boyd Malvo turned up at the Lighthouse Mission.
John and Lee Boyd lived together in a homeless shelter for many months, and it was there that John really began inserting his discipline into Lee Boyd's life. Eventually, John got a place and began training Lee Boyd in the use of weaponry.
He started to cut Malvo off from any others who might have an influence over him. And that is a key tactic of coercive and controlling behaviour. You isolate your target from anybody who might criticise the relationship that you have with them.
Mohammed did quite a lot of good things for Malvo. He made sure he went to school. In fact, at one point, he registered him for school as his father, actually cementing this concept of him being the father, moulding his new son.
In October 2001, in recognition of his Islamic faith, John Allen Williams had officially changed his name to John Allen Muhammad. He encouraged Lee Boyd to also learn about his version of Islam.
John took Lee Boyd under his wing. He had kidnapped his own son, Lindbergh, and that hadn't worked out. And so in Lee Boyd, he saw the perfect venue through which to, achieve what he wanted to achieve in life.
They start shooting at tree stumps. Malvo is very impressed by this. And remember, he's 16. He's very impressionable.
Lee Boyd was actually ripe for the manipulation that John would do with him. John controlled every aspect of his life, what he ate. He exercised him rigorously. John was a master marksman, and he trained Lee Boyd to be a marksman.
Malvo's mother, Una James, arrived in Bellingham in December 2001 to see her son. They met at the Lighthouse Mission, but someone had tipped off immigration services. Both Una and Lee Boyd were detained as illegal immigrants. Before he could be deported, Malvo managed to run away and returned to John Muhammad.
What was it that turned them from being an older man and a younger boy into what was effectively a killing machine? I think it started because Malvo wanted to prove to Williams that he was worthy of his respect. I think that Malvo always wanted to show the older man that he was capable of living up to him.
February 16th, 2002, Tacoma, Washington. Lee Boyd Malvo approached the house of Isa Nichols, a friend of John Muhammad's ex-wife Mildred. Her niece, Kenya Nicole Cook, was visiting her aunt with her baby daughter. Kenya answered a knock at the front door. Malvo shot the 21-year-old point blank. He'd killed for the first time 2 days before his 17th birthday.
I absolutely believe that John Allen Muhammad brainwashed Lee Boyd Malvo. I think Lee Boyd's life would have been totally different had he never met John Muhammad. I don't think he would have ever killed.
1 month later, March 19th, in Tucson, Arizona, 60-year-old Jerry Taylor was on the golf course. A long-range single shot to the chest killed him. From March to August 2002, there were 2 more fatalities and 5 serious injuries across several states.
The first proper killing is almost certainly committed by Malvo as a test from Muhammad. You've got to kill someone so that I can see that you are worthy of my respect. And the first string of shootings, almost all are committed by Malvo.
September 5th, 2002, Clinton, Maryland. Restaurant owner Paul J. LaRufa was carrying over $3,000 of cash and a laptop inside his briefcase. As he got in the car, Lee Boyd Malvo rushed up and shot him 6 times through the window. He emptied the briefcase, stole the cash, and fled with the laptop and his gun. Miraculously, Paul J. LaRufa survived. 5 days later, with the cash stolen from LaRufa, Muhammad purchased a 1990 blue Chevy Caprice at Sure Shot Auto Sales in Trenton, New Jersey.
Apparently, when Muhammad was purchasing this Chevy Caprice in New Jersey, we learned from the salesman that he did something very unusual that in 25 years of being a car salesman had never been seen before by this person. He said that Muhammad opened the trunk and climbed into the back of the trunk and pulled the trunk cover down and said, "Yeah, this will work."
September 15th, Clinton, Maryland. September 21st, Atlanta, Georgia. 19 hours later, a liquor store in Montgomery, Alabama. 2 women were gunned down with a long-range, high-powered rifle. Malvo approached and rifled through their purses. A police car spotted him and gave chase. He ran, dropping a gun catalogue and discarding a .22 caliber revolver. Claudine Lee Parker died of her injuries, and Kelly Adams survived despite being shot through the neck. Finally, September 23rd, Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
In this first spree of killings, they are moving location across states. They weren't concentrating on one area, and that made them incredibly difficult to track down, because these apparently were random killings committed in different states. How you join the dots to that? The answer is you don't.
Between September the 26th and October the 2nd, 2002, there were no killings. During this break, Mohammed and Malvo modified their new Chevy Caprice. They drilled a hole in the trunk.
They used a glove to lay the barrel on through the hole to extend the end of the rifle through to the outside of the trunk. And then they pulled the trunk almost closed, but left about an inch for visibility through their sight.
Satisfied with the modifications, they headed to the suburbs of Washington, D.C.
On October the 2nd, 2002, at 5:30 in the afternoon, a shot was fired through a craft store window, narrowly missing the cashier. That was the first of the D.C. sniper shootings. An hour later, at 6:30, a man was killed by a rifle. He was called James Martin.
The following day, October 3rd, 0741, James Sonny Buchanan was shot, mowing the lawn of an auto
What's going on, man? This guy's lawnmower did something, man. It chopped him up. He's bleeding real bad. He's down and out.
30 minutes later, at a petrol station in Aspen Hill, Prem Kumar Walliker.
We got a major crime scene.
Leisure World Shopping Centre, Sarah Ramos.
You need the ambulance, please.
She was sitting on a bench reading a book. That same morning, Lori Ann Lewis Rivera, vacuuming her Dodge minivan.
And then finally, on that day, at 9:20 in the evening, Pascal Charlot, a retired carpenter, was shot walking along Georgia Avenue in Washington, D.C. And if there was one single day that transformed the nation's capital and sent a shiver down its spine, it was October the 3rd, 2002.
October 3rd, Montgomery County, Maryland. John Allen Muhammad and Lee Boyd Malvo had brought terror to the suburbs of Washington, D.C. 5 people had been killed in less than 16 hours. Ashen Benedict was a special agent with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms assigned to the Washington Field Division.
At that time, 5 people getting shot in one day was very unusual, right? Unfortunately, in today's day and age, you hear about it much more frequently. But at that time, it definitely raised some eyebrows. It definitely got law enforcement response generated. And the great thing about ATF is that we will respond to shootings as a matter of business practice.
Witness statements on October 3rd detailed seeing a blue Chevy Caprice, but it was not reported as acting suspiciously. On that day at 7 p.m. in the evening, the Chevy ran 2 stop signs near Washington, D.C. and was stopped by the police. John Muhammad pulled over.
He had a valid license, he had a valid registration, and he was very respectful and cordial to the officers when they stopped him.
These attacks came a year after 9/11, And 9/11 cast a very long shadow over the US. There was a real climate of fear, a real state of anxiety. The nation was on a really high state of alert at this time. So it's almost like the perfect opportunity, this window of time for Mohammed and Malvo to wreak utter destruction.
We're going to follow the evidence. We're going to follow the science and the technology. We had numerous shell casings recovered at all these scenes, and they all went to the ATF National Laboratory in Beltsville, Maryland. And so we ascertained very quickly that the same gun was used to fire at different shooting scenes. So that science gave us a starting point. We knew we had one shooter, or we had one gun utilized by several shooters potentially, and that kind of honed in our investigative team.
Those bullets that we received had 6 lands and grooves, and they had a right twist on it. And we can measure those land impressions, each one of the 6, and we can measure each one of the groove impressions, note the direction of twist, and come up with a fair degree of accuracy, the make and the model of the firearm that fired that projectile.
The gun was identified as a Bushmaster .223 caliber rifle, not a weapon usually associated with a sniper.
You can go to gun shows and just buy it cash and carry in some locations here in the U.S. The AR style 15 firearm was developed by the military, and it was a firearm they used in Vietnam. It's not an unusual firearm. In the States, most of them, mass shootings occur with this kind of rifle.
On October the 4th, the following day to this outrageous attack in Washington, D.C., the pair moved their location. And a woman called Caroline Sewell is shot while she's loading her car. She does, however, survive.
Forensic analysis from the crime scene again determined that the bullet fragments came from a .223 caliber Bushmaster. A blue Chevy Caprice was also seen in the vicinity. The tip lines received thousands of calls, and witness sightings of a blue Chevy were buried in the volume of information coming in. 3 days later, on October 7th, Mohammed and Malvo drove to a wooded area close to Benjamin Tasker Middle School in Bowie, Maryland. One of them took a ballpoint pen and wrote on a tarot card depicting death, "Call me God." On the back they wrote, "For you, Mr. Police, code, call me God, do not release to the press." The card was placed in a plastic bag and attached to a tree. They hunkered down in a makeshift blind and waited.
He's called Iram Brown, and he's 13. He's attending a middle school, and he's been taken there by his aunt.
He fell to the ground with a single gunshot wound to the chest, critically injured.
Now, all of our victims have been innocent, have been defenseless. But now we're stepping over the line because our children don't deserve this.
But it's after that shooting that we get the first communication between Mohammed and Malvo and the authorities. Dear Mr. Police, it's a taunt.
It was leaked that it said, "I am God." And in fact, it said, "Call me God." So anyone that called the tip line and said, "I know somebody who says, I am God 10 times a day. I think you should look at him," we were able to eliminate without spending too much time on it.
We were all in this together, and what every agency did the best of, they brought that best to the table and said, "I will handle this." ATF said, "We are the Federal Firearms Investigative Agency for the United States. We will do the ballistics. The FBI will do fingerprinting." The Montgomery County, Prince George's County, Virginia State authorities, they work crime scenes. That's what they do well.
On October 9th, around 8:15 in the evening, 53-year-old Dean Mayers was filling his car at a Sunoco petrol station in Manassas, Virginia. The blue Chevy Caprice was parked in a lot across the street. A single shot to the head killed Mayers as he stood at the petrol pump. With such a heightened state of alert, police were quickly at the scene. The bullet recovered was from a .223 caliber Bushmaster rifle. In the immediate aftermath of the shooting, Mohammed was interviewed in the parking lot, but not detained.
Local news here in Washington is national news. And so when you have a serial shooter or shooters committing random acts of violence in the nation's capital and its suburbs, it captures the nation's attention very, very quickly. All eyes were on Washington at that time.
It was like anybody else sitting at home watching CNN, and you see one day it was a shooting somewhere, and then you check back 2-3 days later and it's another shooting, then it's another shooting. So I was captivated and on alert like the rest of the world was.
So I think there was a sense of satisfaction on the part of the snipers that they were able to create this sense of fear, paralyze a community, paralyze the nation's capital, the region, with one gun. And so, but it wasn't enough for them. I mean, they could have, gone across the country and escaped, but no, they kept at it. It was a game of cat and mouse.
7 dead in the D.C. suburbs and 2 more critically injured. For Mohammed and Malvo, it wasn't enough. John Allen Mohammed and Lee Boyd Malvo's killing spree had gripped the entire nation. No one in and around Washington, D.C. felt safe. Although their targets were random, the planning was not.
They were killing people close to the exits and entrances of interstates. So as they would shoot somebody, all they had to do was jump on the interstate to go to their next destination, and it made an easy escape route for them.
On October 11th, 2002, Kenneth Bridges is shot at an Exxon station in Fredericksburg, Virginia. And at that point, some of the gas station owners on the East Coast begin to erect tarpaulins so that their customers can drive in and fill up their cars without fearing they're going to be targeted by a sniper. That's how big an effect that Mohammed and Malvo have had on the whole area.
There was no connection between the victims. The only connection was between the shootings themselves, the ballistics, the evidence left behind, the DNA, the fingerprints, the notes. That was the link.
October 14th, Columbus Day holiday. 47-year-old FBI analyst Linda Franklin was shopping at a Home Depot with her husband. From across the street, Malvo trained his sight on William Franklin. At the last moment, he switched targets and pulled the trigger.
And she had her head blown off in front of her husband, literally. And that reality and just the whole emotion of the gravity of that and the sadness, I mean, the 911 call that Mr. Franklin made immediately following Linda Franklin going down is chilling. And I will never get that out of my head.
No one was standing around. Folks were definitely on edge and not looking to make themselves a target. But the streets were just shut down. I mean, the amount of traffic in the Washington region is pretty heavy on a normal day. But when you start shutting down roads around crime scenes and on the Beltway, it comes to an absolute crawl.
After the shooting of Linda Franklin, Mohammed and Malvo laid low for 5 days. During this period, the task force caught a lucky break. A fingerprint taken from a gun catalogue found at a crime scene in Alabama on September 22nd was a match to a print taken by Immigration Services in Bellingham, Washington state. This information coincided with a call to the tip line from a Bellingham resident called Robert Holmes.
An Army friend of John Allen Williams who said, I think this could be my friend and my coworker in the Army. And he gave us that name. And he said, incidentally, he's recently been traveling with someone I think is about 17 that he nicknamed Sniper.
The National Motor Vehicle Title Database also revealed that John Allen Mohammed had purchased a blue Chevy Caprice on September 10th, 2002 in Trenton, New Jersey.
It was very specific. We had linked the shootings to the robbery down in Alabama. The forensics information came in, the DNA came in, the fingerprints came in. We were able to put that all together and realize who we're looking for. So now we had concrete information on the suspects and the vehicle we're looking for. So that happened in a blink of an eye, where we went from casting a wide net to now we know who we're looking for. We're fishing with a spear.
On the evening of October 19th, Malvo and Mohammed were concealed in the tree line opposite the Ponderosa Steakhouse in Ashland, Virginia, waiting. They tacked a handwritten 5-page note to a nearby tree. The note was emblazoned with 13 red stars, one for each kill. Just before 8 p.m., 37-year-old Jeffrey Hopper left the steakhouse with his wife and was shot in the stomach. He was critically injured but alive.
The note basically demanded $10 million be put on a credit card, which fortunately the criminals aren't as smart as they could be, or it might be more difficult to catch them, but they expected us to put $10 million on a credit card.
Mohammed asks for $10 million for them to give themselves up so that they can found a school for disadvantaged black children in Canada.
On October 22nd, Mohammed and Malvo waited across the street from a bus stop in Montgomery County. Another note was positioned in plain sight. At 05:58 a.m., a bus driver was about to begin his daily route. A single gunshot to the chest. He died standing on the top step of his bus.
His name was Conrad, was his first name. The note in the bushes, in the plastic bag, not necessarily for its forensic value, but for the mere fact that they put it there. And they just killed a man. And it's a game to them, right? It was so upsetting to me to see that level of, so casual about taking a life and planting this note and going, now see if you can find me. Here's a little bit more.
On October 23rd, the DC Sniper Task Force released the license plate of the blue Chevy Caprice and descriptions of their primary suspects to the national media.
Well, we wanted to use the media and the public and law enforcement as a team to find these suspects, right? So it wasn't a secret that we wanted to find them, and we need everybody's help to do that. So the only things that we were trying to keep kind of close hold was we wanted to make sure the information we were releasing to the public was accurate, it was actionable, and it was timely.
On October 23rd, refrigerator repairman Whitney Donahue was driving home on the I-70 to Pennsylvania when he heard a news report releasing the details of the wanted suspects.
He made a note on his pay stub, which was on his passenger seat, of the information of the car and wrote down the license plate. He pulled into a rest stop off of I-70, and as soon as he got parked, he observed a blue Chevy Caprice. It fit the description of what he had just heard on the news. He called 911. And so he was very brave and got on his CB radio, which is the ability to communicate with the truckers in the region. And on his own, he asked truckers to help block the entrance to the rest stop and the exit from the rest stop with their 18-wheelers so that these suspects wouldn't be able to escape by car.
Donahue confirmed the license plate and that the vehicle was occupied to the police. He waited and watched as law enforcement agents moved in.
The window was breached because the door in the back was locked. They were pulled out, they were handcuffed and separated on the curb. And immediately the first review of the car, they were able to find the Bushmaster behind the back seat. And it had one in the chamber ready to fire. It was actually not in the safe mode. So a simple pull of the trigger and there would have been an incident. And Malvo said, "It's my fault. I fell asleep."
It was a huge relief, and it was a sense of accomplishment and pride, not only for ATF, but for the entire task force team. The nation's psyche was drawn to this investigation because really it could be any one of us on any given day. 3 weeks of shootings, of trying to find these people, bring them to justice, get them off the street, get the public safety aspect back to where folks are comfortable in their communities.
Both men initially pled not guilty and faced years of litigation for their multi-jurisdictional crimes. In October 2003, John Allen Mohammed was first brought to trial in the state of Virginia for the murder of Dean Mayers. He was found guilty of capital murder and in March 2004 sentenced to death by lethal injection. Lee Boyd Malvo was first brought to trial in 2003 in Virginia for the murder of Linda Franklin. As a minor, he did not face the death penalty. 3 years later, in a surprise reversal, Malvo pleaded guilty and testified against Mohammed. Malvo is currently serving 10 consecutive life sentences without parole in Red Onion State Prison in Virginia.
I don't hold him as responsible as I hold John Allen Mohammed, because John Allen Mohammed took a teenager who did not have a father from his home, and he manipulated him, he brainwashed him, and he trained him to be a monster.
There isn't an ounce of me that thinks that Malvo was brainwashed by Mohammed. I think that he was all in, and I was a very willing participant. He was calculating and smart on choosing targets, and the teamwork was obviously very successful.
The prosecutors in Mohammed's trial insisted that perhaps the motive was that Mohammed wished to shoot his ex-wife, second ex-wife, Mildred, and he was using these shootings around Washington as an excuse. I've never believed it. I don't think it's true.
How could the person that at one point in time I looked up to commit these type of crimes? What happened to lead up to these crimes? What went so wrong to make you snap and think this was the right decision to make these actions?
On November 10th, 2009, at Greensville Correctional Center in Virginia, John Allen Mohammed was executed by lethal injection.
At 9:11 p.m., Mohammed was pronounced dead.
The only person he spoke to that night was his son, Lindbergh.
Last words my father told me was, "Be strong, black man." That was his exact last words. Be strong, black man. And he turned around and walked out the door and never looked back.
What makes these two killers so despicable is the fact that to be somebody, they had to destroy other people. They felt that to gain the respect that they were entitled to and to gain the recognition, they needed to go and harm and gun down everyday people going about their business.
I remember seeing, again, his body outside that bus and thinking to myself, this gentleman just went to work to take people to about their day-to-day lives, and that was taken from him, and it was senselessly taken from him.
I am getting older, and I don't remember what I had to eat yesterday for breakfast, but I remember the dates and the victims and the tragedy of this case with a snap of a finger. So I can't explain it. It's deep.
17 people shot dead. The largest serial killer manhunt in the history of the United States had ended. There was no pattern to the senseless killing. There were no victim profiles. They were all just ordinary folk living their lives, going about their daily business when they were targeted by the Beltway snipers, John Allen Mohammed and Lee Boyd Malvo, two of the world's most evil killers.
He's always by our side, right or wrong. I love you so much, and I'm so sorry for all I have put you through. I hope you have a good day. Happy Mother's Day, with love always, Bass. Every letter that he's wrote me for holidays, I kept them all. He never said this stuff in person to me. It just breaks my heart to see this one and then look at this one. And it's the same person. I love them both, but I love this one more. I know what he did was bad. He needed to be punished. I admit he needed to be punished for what he done. But I can't help it. I love him and I always will love him. And I know a lot of people has walked away, but I can't do that. I can't close that door. I wish I could, but I tried, but I can't. He's a part of me, and I can't help it. That's the way I feel. And that's something no one can take away from me as long as I breathe. I love him. And I know he loves me. That was a good old day. He's a good baby. He looks so sweet and innocent. And now that he's grown up, it's not like that no more. It's just like yesterday. And in a way, I wish it could go back in time and be better, a better life for all of us. He was my miracle baby. I really don't know if I really told him about what happened, about the birth. When I had him, I was having trouble. I had him a week early. I didn't hear him cry. And I asked the doctor, I said, is anything wrong with my baby? He said, hold on, ma'am. He handed me my son. His face was so purple because the neighbor cord was wrapped around his neck so tight. And the doctor said it's a good thing I did have him a week early, because if I didn't, he would have died. And to me, in my heart, I think God let me have him for some reason. And, but I didn't want it to turn out this way. Hoping that he would grow up and be a good man, have a good job, have his own family. That's what I was hoping. But it didn't happen. Things just didn't work out that way. Ever since he was a little boy, he acts like he was always tough. Like nobody can take control of him. That's the way he's always been. He was like clumsy when he was little, and I constantly had to take him to the hospital.
I just turned around. The next thing I know, he's on the ground crying.
All right, let's get you checked out, okay?
When we went to the doctor, he didn't want the doctor to touch him. He stood back in the corner, wouldn't budge. If he didn't get his way, you could see it. You could see it in his eyes. It's like he couldn't get along with no one. He wanted his way or no way. That's the way he was. One doctor asked me, what is he acting that way for? I said, sir, I don't know why he's not letting you, check him out. I don't understand.
Maybe I just need to talk to him alone for a minute.
And then I said, could you step out of the room for a minute? And he said, yeah.
Honey, what's wrong?
And that's when I talked about his best. It's just a checkup, honey. Let the doctor check you out.
No, I don't want him touching me.
He just wants to make sure you're okay.
I said, I'm not being checked. Well, he said, I'll walk out.
I don't care. If he comes back, I'll leave.
I said, you're 7 years old, you tell me you're going to walk out. There's nothing wrong with this. Let the doctor check you out.
I said no. Leave me alone.
So he's had a temper ever since he was real little. As a child, he wouldn't show no emotions to us, and that kind of worried me. I have 2 boys and a daughter, and him and his brother, they played with Hot Wheels a lot out there in the driveway. And one morning, I went out back and I seen something like ashes or something. And I seen this pile of like pieces of metal, and I could tell they was Hot Wheels. And I thought, what's going on here? I said, you 2 boys come out here for a minute. And they came out and said, what's this going on right here? They said, oh, we just thought we'd get a little bit of gas off Daddy's truck and burn the Hot Wheels. What are y'all doing that for? Oh, we just want to see them melt or whatever. I said, well, I'm going to tell your dad about this when he comes home, and you're probably going to get punished for what you did. When he came home at night from work, I told him what they'd been doing, and that's when he bent them over. He would whoop them if they did something wrong. But Bass, he always acts like he's so tough, like he was made out of iron. But he wouldn't cry. He wouldn't show no feelings. And that had me concerned, him not showing no tears, After his dad whooped him, Bass just walked away. It's like he didn't care. It's like he just walks away from his problems or walks away for what punishment that we give him. And it's like he don't listen to us. It's like he wants to do things his way. And that bothered me. He had a hard time following rules. It's like he wants to be in trouble all the time. He got in trouble in school, mostly for fighting. I don't know how many times I got phone calls in there to come and pick him up. One time, the principal asked me why I come down there and show me what Bass has done. I couldn't believe my eyes. The windows was broke out. The floors was a mess.
Bass, what have you done?
She said he got into a fight with another boy, and then she told him, I'm gonna call your mother. So I guess he got mad about that part. That's when he took his hand and slung everything off her desk, the telephone, everything. Then he bust out one of the windows. He took his foot and just raised up and kicked it out. And I said, Bass, you did all of this. You broke this window out. It's like he didn't care. It's like, so what? I did it, so what? And she said, we can't put up with this. I said, ma'am, I'm so sorry what my son has done. She said, it's not your fault. She said, Bass needs some help.
Bass, you can't keep acting this way. I just don't understand. Why are you doing this?
I said, you act like you're mad at the world for some reason. I said, I don't know what's going on with you, but this has got to stop. He just kind of looked at me and gave me that sneak grin that he always gives me. And I said, so I'm not getting through to you, right? I'm wasting my breath sitting here talking to you, right? Because you're not listening to a word I'm saying.
Are you even listening to me at all?
I could see that he was going down the wrong path.
I'm just so sorry. I just don't know what's going on with him.
It's like he always want to do something bad. There's some things he did good, don't get me wrong, but it's like it's more evil in him than it was good.
Let's go.
My husband's sister said there's a place up here in the country. It's for sale. Would y'all be interested in it? Then after we moved up there, that's when stuff started happening. That's a good picture of him smiling. It breaks my heart seeing the smile on his face, and that I don't see now. The smile just gets me. He didn't smile that much, and I look at his face, and it just breaks my heart. I didn't have no worries back then when he was this age. And this picture, I really don't like to look at it because it makes me very sad. And I look at it and he don't have a smile. And he had attitude that I didn't like at all. I look at his face there. He's like two different personalities.
Which face did you see more often?
This one. This one right here. I keep looking at this one. I look at his eyes. His eyes is different. I can tell something's going on. When you're a mother, you can tell about your son or your daughter. When you look into their eyes, you can tell. There's a lot of signs that maybe I didn't want to face. Different things that he did that maybe I didn't want to really face reality. Going through the years, I see more and more violent in him. Every place we moved, he would get into fights. I couldn't understand why he wanted to be so violent towards everybody. And I remember this one time, I seen Bass took his ball bat out, and I said, Bass, what are you going to do with that ball bat?
Just going out to play ball.
And something just told me something else is going on here. I could tell by the way he was carrying the ball bat out of the house, he wasn't going to play ball. He'd taken his hand, like holding it real tight, like he was just squeezing that ball bat. I could tell he's angry at somebody.
Bass, is everything okay?
Everything's fine.
And I knew right then, I better do something real quick and real fast before something really terrible happened. So I called my brother. He lived right around the corner.
Hey, it's Vicky.
I said, will you please follow Bass? Don't let him see you, but follow him. Well, he was going to use the ball bat on this boy. Well, here he was chasing his boy around his yard, and I thought, oh my God, if he hit that boy in the head, he probably would have killed him. And thank God that my brother tackled him and put him down on the ground and held him. When he come home, I said, Bass, I said, why was you chasing that guy around with the baseball? I said, was you really going to hit him? I said, if you did, you're going to do some terrible damage. You wouldn't give me no answer. And he did that a lot. He wouldn't give me no answer. I couldn't figure him out sometimes. He had me puzzled. Me and my husband would sit up for hours trying to figure out what to do, how to do it, because we didn't know what was going to happen next. I took him to a therapist, 2 or 3 therapists, and he wouldn't talk to them. He would say, I don't want to go. It ain't going to do no good for y'all take me. Y'all wasting your time. One place wanted to put him on medication. He denied it. He didn't want to take it. He said, I don't need no medication. And I took him to this place for troubled kids, but it did not help. They let Bass sit out in the hall. And the doctor said, well, I never seen a child just sit there and just look at you. I said, what did he do? She said, he just stared at me and crossed his arms and wouldn't say anything.
I'm afraid there's nothing we can do for him.
I just don't know what else to do.
And I said, do you have any idea why he's doing this? She said, I really don't have a clue.
Well, there's one more option I can give you.
And she said, this is what we can do. She said, we can take him out of your hands. I said, what do you mean by that? She said, we can turn him over to the state, and you and your husband can sign the papers, and you can walk away. I said, you know something, ma'am? I'm not signing nothing. I said, that's my son. I know he's doing wrong, but you think I'm just going to sign a piece of paper and let you take my son?
We'll figure something out.
I said, come on, Bass, we're leaving. We walked out, and I did not tell him that I could have gave him away to the state. That'd been so easy for us to sign that paper and just forget about it. But I couldn't do it. As a mother, I love him, and I wasn't going to do that. But it makes me feel so bad, the things he has done, that maybe if we did do that, things today would have been different. Every time we turned around, something was going on with Bass. And me and my husband had to think how to deal with it before it got out of hand. One day, he stole his dad's pistol. The police just came to our door, and he said, ma'am, somebody called, said that Bass had a pistol. Bass threw it on the ground in somebody's yard. And I said, let me get my husband. The police asked my husband, did you have his pistol out in the open? He said, no, sir, I didn't have his pistol out in the open. He said, Bass just found it in the closet, and he took it. We didn't know he took it. And I looked at Bass, we was sitting on the couch. Police asked him, you know, what was you going to do? You know, what are you going to do? And he just said, it's none of your business, like that. I said, don't talk to him like that. You know, don't have that attitude.
Bass, answer the question.
Doesn't matter.
So he gets up, and the officer said, no, you need to sit down and listen to me. And I asked him, I said, what were you going to do with that pistol?
I told you I wasn't going to do nothing.
He said, oh, I just carried it around. But it didn't have no bullets in it.
This has got to stop.
It's ridiculous. I said, that's all you do, Bass, is get into trouble. I said, it needs to stop. But it's like he didn't care. It's like he had no feelings. Then my husband said, well, you know something, Vicki? You think this is bad? This is going to get worse. The older Bass gets, it's going to get worse, Vicki. You better prepare and be ready for this, because it's going to get worse than this. And I looked at him, I said, surely not. His Vicki is going to get worse. And it did. Well, he's not smiling in that picture either. Why should that surprise me? When they took it, and I got it developed, and I looked at it, and I looked close to his face, and he does. He looks angry for some reason, and I don't know why. It puzzles me. He seemed like he's angry all the time. I did see some evil in him a lot when he was getting older as a man. It's like he had a different personality. I could see in his eyes, it seemed like he had a lot of anger in him.
Bass, what are you doing?
One time, he wanted my truck.
I need the keys to the truck.
I said, you're not getting my keys. You're not driving my truck. He said, well, if you don't let me drive your truck, I'm going to set it on fire.
Excuse me?
You heard what I said.
I looked at him like I was just shocked. I said, do what? He said, I'm going to put a towel in your gas tank and start it on fire, and I'm going to let your truck blow up. I didn't think that he ain't going to do that. Well, I got full. He kind of walked off. I could tell he got kind of mad. It's like he don't want to take no for an answer. He put a piece of rag down there. Then he started on the rag on fire, and Bass just stood back and watched like this ain't no big deal. So my other son went out there and he pulled it out real quick. He stepped on it. So it took my husband and my son to hold Bass down on the ground till I called the law, because we didn't know what he was going to do next. The cops came, and he said, "So you want us to take him?" I said, "Yes." I said, "He just tried to blow up my truck." I said, "Yes, I want him in jail." I said, "Bass, I have had enough of this." I said, "What do you expect us to do? Just stand back and let you do whatever you want? That's not going to happen, Bass. But I don't care if I had to call the cops 100 times a day on you. I'm not going to put up with this." And he just looked at me, just shakes his shoulder like, "So what?" No. And I just looked at him like, "God, that can't be my son there, That's why I keep saying in the back of my head that can't be my son doing this." So they handcuffed Bass and they took him to jail. My husband said, "Vicki, we need to put all the knives away." He said, "Something's going on with Bass." And he said, "I just got a bad feeling." He said, "I'm going to take all the knives out of the kitchen."
What?
He's dangerous, and you know he's dangerous.
I said, "Bass is not going to hurt us." I said, "I know in my heart he's not going to hurt me, and I don't think he would hurt you." He said, "We don't know what he thinks anymore, so this is the reason why I'm doing this." He said, "Vicki, please open your eyes and realize what's going on here. We have tried. What else can we do as parents?" And my oldest son said, "Mom, you need to get him out of this house before something really bad happens." And I said, "He's right. Maybe I just didn't want a minute to myself." And I kept thinking, nah, Bass wouldn't do something like that to us. I guess I really didn't want to face that Bass could do something to me or to his dad.
Why do you think you could act like this? I'll do whatever the hell I want.
I was sitting in the kitchen with my husband. They was arguing back and forth.
You'll do what I tell you to do. You understand?
Bass said something about, "If you open your mouth again, I'm going to knock you down."
Just shut up!
And I said, "Bass, don't put your hands on your daddy." Bass just took his fist and he hit him so hard. When he hit his daddy, that's really what opened my eyes. If he could have done something like that to his own father, it's like you don't care what you do. You don't care who you hurt. And I said, "I can't believe that you hit your daddy."
Bass, what did you do?
I said, "Bass, if you even act like you're going to hit me, you're going to be gone for a long time. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm calling the law. You're going to go to jail." That's when I called 911 and told them I need an officer out there. And the cops came and got him. I forgot how long he stayed in jail, but they did arrest him. And I said, I don't want him back here. I told him, "I want you out of my home. I think it's time for you to move out. We can't handle this no more." I hope he can open up to me and let me know why, because it's killing me every day. Why would you do something so terrible? The older he got, it seemed like the worse he got. He stayed with some friends, and it kind of gave me relief because me and my husband slept better. But I still worried when he moved out. I still worried, what he's doing. He would come by and visit after work sometimes, and he would come home angry or something like that. And I would say, "What's the matter?" He said, "Nothing, I don't want to talk about it." He got locked up a lot of times in jail. for different things, outrunning the cop and stealing and stuff like that. He was in and out of jail so much, it's like every time you turn around, there was a knock on the door. Sure enough, it'd be a police sitting there. You know where your son is? I was just scared he'd do something really terrible. I just had that feeling. The first girl, her name is Sabrina. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was on Thanksgiving Day. We was getting ready to go down to my mom's for Thanksgiving dinner. Bass brought her out to the house, and she seemed nice. She sat down and talked to us for a little bit.
You're welcome anytime. Don't be a stranger. You hear?
I really don't know that much about her, just what little bit she told me. I asked her, did she have any kids? She said, I got a daughter. And she was like 5 or 6 years old. They seemed like they got along pretty good. That morning, they was laughing and talking and stuff. I just met her that one time, and that's the last time I seen her was on Thanksgiving. I'll never forget that day either. Me and my husband, we usually watch the news in the afternoon on TV, and we sitting on the couch. And that's when her picture came up. It says she was missing. And they showed her face. And my husband looked and said, ain't that girl that was here? And I looked real close, and I said, that is her, ain't it? And he said, what did Bass tell you about her? I remember asking Bass one night, Bass, are you seeing Sabrina anymore? He said, no. He said, me and her, we didn't click or something. My husband, he said, I think something's fishy about this. I said, what do you mean? He said, I just think something fishy about this story, Vicky. I said, well, I hope you're wrong. And that's all we said to one another. And I didn't think no more about it, you know. Bass came over. Bass told us, if anybody comes to your house, Mom, you don't have to answer nothing.
Bass, what are you talking about?
And I said, well, who's going to come to the house? He said, probably police will come in and maybe want to ask you about Sabrina.
Don't say anything about it.
Honey, I don't even know what happened. What would I say?
I said, what do you mean? He said, I haven't done nothing, so don't tell him nothing.
Where did she go? Did something happen?
I said, Bass, do you know something that we don't know? And he said, no, I don't know nothing. I don't know where she's at.
It doesn't matter, Mama. Just promise me. If anybody comes asking about Sabrina, you don't tell them nothing.
And I said, okay. That's kind of weird, him saying that. I guess what it is, as a mother, I didn't want to see the evil in Bass. Sure enough, there was 2 detectives came out to the house. They asked if they'd come in. I said, what is this about? And they said it's about Sabrina Bond.
Do you recall the last time you seen Sabrina?
It was on Thanksgiving Day. Bass introduced me to her, and I said hi to her. And that's the last that we seen of her, wasn't it? I think it was. And they was asking us what time and all that, and we told them. And that's all we knew. We still didn't had it in our mind that Bass could have had something to do with this.
When you talked to Bass, has he heard anything since then about her or about what might have happened or anything like that?
No, he never said anything.
We asked Bass about that girl, and he said, I don't know nothing about her. You know, of course, we mentioned it to him.
I didn't want to believe that my son would do something like that. And I said, why do you want to ask us this question? He said, we just need some answer for her family. I said, so what are you saying? You think my son is involved in this? He said, well, I can't say anything right now. We just want some answer from you and your husband.
If you did hear anything that might give us an idea of where to look for her or what may have happened to her or anything like that, give one of us a call, see if we can find out what happened to her.
I know my son wouldn't do something like that. And I said, will you please leave? And they left, and they never came back. Years went by, and the girl still wasn't found. And I kept saying in my mind, I hope to God they find her, and I hope she's safe. But she wasn't. He was in prison. I can't remember what he did, but she was the deputy there. It wasn't 3 days after he got out, he moved in with her. She's very pretty, very nice looking lady. She had a good personality. I mean, she's sweet as can be. She's got 2 little girls, and she had a good job. And I thought, God, maybe he found somebody that loves him, you know, who he is. He said that, you know, they're going to get married in June. I said, Bass, I think this is too fast. He said, Mom, I know what I'm doing. I said, okay. They seemed like they was doing good, I mean, for a while there. And then all of a sudden, it seemed like he snapped or something. That was took in prison. In a way, he's like a stranger in this photo. I know that's my son, but it's not my son. It makes me very sad because he's going to be in prison for the rest of his life. If I die before him, he knows I know what he has done. But me and him's never talked about it. I like to talk about it before I go, but I don't know if I have that chance. Me and my husband was in town, and my sister-in-law called me on my cell phone. And that's when she said, Vicki, you need to get home. I said, why? She said, I'm just telling you, you need to get home right now. I don't want to tell you this on the phone. Something has happened. And then we rushed out to the house. I thought something happened to Bass. That's what I really thought. She said, cut the news on and you'll see what's going on. So I cut the news on, and they kept showing it over and over and over. Bass killed Bree. I said, oh, God, tell me you're lying about this. Tell me this is not true. The state troopers chased him on the interstate, and that's when the vehicle got on fire, and he had to surrender. He told the state trooper, he said, get someone out to her house. He said, her girls is in the bed asleep, and I don't want them to wake up to see what shape their mother's in. So they got someone out there real fast to get the girls out of the house. He had a blanket over her on the couch. I got 2 different stories. I got one that he strangled her to death, and then I heard that he beat her to death. And maybe that's the reason why he covered her up. I don't know. What the cop told me was you wouldn't want to see her the way she was. Take someone's life for no reason. And that makes me very, very sad that Bass would do something like that. And she loved him. She had 2 daughters. Now they don't have a mother or a father, either one. And their grandmother's raising them. I remember what her mother said in the courtroom about my son. And she said, Bass Webb deserves to die. And at the time, I didn't like what she said. And then I sat down and thought, somebody killed my daughter like this for no reason. I would feel the same way. Wanted to walk up and talk to her, but I was scared to because she was so upset. It just tore us apart to find out that our son was capable of killing someone. And I said, my God, What else has he done that we don't know of? They had a talk with Bass's cousin, John. Said, we'll make you a deal if you tell us where her body is. John told the police that Bass is the one to strangle Sabrina. And yes, I did help her with the body. When they found her body and digged it up, I found out that she was strangled to death. How could you live with yourself all them years knowing where this girl's body was, and she had a daughter out here praying that her mother walk in that door anytime, thinking she's alive, and she wasn't. It was just a nightmare. I can't imagine what this girl went through when Bass strangled her. I can't imagine what's going through her mind. She had a life, and that should never happen. She didn't do nothing wrong to deserve that. She lost her life over something that I don't understand, and I don't know if I ever will find the answer for this before I pass away.
As the arraignment was wrapping up today, Webb spit on the judge sitting in front of him.
There's no way I'm going to try this case or have any further proceedings, or I have to see you for one further step. Is that for the American High School?
Unbelievable that my son would do something like that. It's like a different person sitting there. They had him put a mask on. It was really scary to see that mask over his face. So they put that over his head for a very long time when he faced the judge, because they didn't know what he would do next. That's when I talked to him, when they sentenced him. I asked the judge, can I talk to him for a few minutes in the courtroom? I couldn't touch him. I said, I wish I could hug you, but they told me I can't. But I said, look at me. You know I love you, don't you? He says, yeah, Mom, I know you love me. I know you've been through a lot. He said, I know I put you through a lot. He said, I'm sorry what I have done. He said, you don't deserve this. I broke down and told him, I don't know if I can handle this or not. And I'm sorry. I just been through so much. I mean, I know it's been a long time since this happened, and it seemed like it was yesterday to me. I had to go to the hospital for 2 weeks because I had a nervous breakdown. And I had to talk to a therapist about what happened. I said, I feel like I failed you as a mother. And my husband said, you did all you can do. It's not your fault. But still, I still feel guilty. It's just hard. I sit back and think of different things. I've seen things, and I should know something was going to happen one day because the way his anger was. I should know that. But as a mother, I guess I didn't want to really accept it. He's paying for it for the rest of his life. In a way, I am too, because he broke my heart It hurts me every day, and he knows it does, but I try to hold it in. I've never been the same. People notice that change because of him. But I try to keep a fake smile, I just grin and go on, I want people to know that I'm not going to walk away from him. I know what he did was bad, but he's my son, and I still love him as a mother. I can't help it. I still love him with all my heart, and I always will.